There is a difference between force and aggression. Most people confuse the two. Aggression is loud. It pushes. It defends. It sharpens tone to protect position. Force is different. Force is clean. It is direct. It moves without emotional spillover. It does not need to injure in order to be effective. And when it comes to speech, this difference changes everything. Most of us learn to speak in one of two ways. We either learn to defend or we learn to soften. Some of us sharpened our voices early in life. We learned that volume equals safety, that intensity equals control, that dominance prevents erasure. Others learned the opposite. We learned that shrinking avoids conflict, that politeness prevents rejection, that staying agreeable keeps the peace. Both are identity strategies. Both are forms of self-protection, and both drain energy. Because in both cases, speech is not just communication. It is self-maintenance. Notice what happens inside before you speak in a difficult moment. There is a pause, not a grounded pause, a calculating one. How do I say this without sounding weak? How do I say this without starting a fight? How do I say this without looking foolish? How do I say this without losing status? That internal committee begins drafting versions. Version A is softer. Version B is sharper. Version C is strategic. And by the time you speak, your energy is split. You are speaking and monitoring yourself simultaneously. That split weakens force. Force without identity is different. It does not rehearse excessively. It does not inflate tone. It does not collapse into politeness. It simply says what needs to be said. Clear, measured, steady. And because there is no emotional armor wrapped around it, it lands more cleanly. Force does not need volume. It needs alignment. Let's talk about disagreement. When ego is involved, disagreement feels like attack. You hear, "You're wrong," but internally, it registers as, "You are wrong." Identity merges with opinion, so defense activates. Voice tightens, heart rate increases, thoughts accelerate. Now you are not discussing an idea. You are protecting yourself, and protection changes tone. It adds edge. It adds sarcasm. It adds urgency. Sometimes it adds silence, the kind that punishes. All of it is identity reacting. Now imagine disagreement without identity. Someone challenges your view. You assess it. If they're right, you adjust. If they're wrong, you clarify. No collapse. No escalation. Your voice remains even. You do not need to dominate the room. You do not need to win. You need to be clear. Clarity is force. And clarity does not require ego. There is something powerful about a calm, direct sentence. "I disagree. That won't work. I'm not comfortable with that. That's not acceptable." No. Spoken without apology. Spoken without hostility. Spoken without fear. Just force. Most people either apologize excessively when they speak, or they sharpen to compensate. Force sits in the middle. It is firm but not inflated. This matters in work. If you are constantly cushioning your speech to avoid discomfort, your ideas lose strength. If you are constantly over-asserting to maintain control, trust erodes. Force without identity builds trust. People feel that you are not trying to overpower them. They also feel that you will not fold under pressure. That combination creates respect, not because you demand it, but because your presence is stable. There is also a misconception that force requires emotional intensity. It doesn't. Emotional intensity often weakens force. When your tone rises unnecessarily, your message becomes about your emotion instead of your point. When your voice trembles from suppression, your message becomes about your fear instead of your clarity. Force is emotionally regulated, not cold, not detached, regulated. It is grounded enough that emotion does not hijack it. Let's bring this into relationships. How many times have you avoided saying something because you didn't want to upset someone? How many times have you said something harsher than necessary because you felt unheard? Both are identity-driven. One protects through shrinking. The other protects through sharpening. But imagine saying, "That hurt. I need more support. I'm not okay with that. I can't continue this way." Without trembling, without attacking, without over-explaining, just direct. That kind of speech changes relationships because it is honest without aggression. And honesty delivered calmly is hard to argue with. There is also something freeing about speaking without rehearsing your persona. You don't need to sound impressive. You don't need to sound wise. You don't need to sound dominant. You need to sound aligned. Alignment means what you say matches what you feel. No inflation, no reduction. When alignment is present, force naturally follows. Because there is no internal contradiction. Think about moments when someone spoke to you with grounded force. They didn't yell. They didn't posture. They didn't over-explain. They said exactly what needed to be said and stopped. That brevity carries weight. Over-talking often signals insecurity. Silence after clarity signals strength. Force without identity also means you don't chase approval after speaking. You don't skin faces for validation. You don't immediately justify. You don't backtrack unless correction is needed. You allow the statement to stand. That stillness after speaking is part of force. It says, I meant that. I'm not retracting it. I'm not escalating it. I'm standing in it. Most people can feel that difference immediately. This applies deeply in leadership and parenting. When instructions are delivered with tension, they invite resistance. When boundaries are delivered with insecurity, they invite testing. But when direction is delivered with calm force, it stabilizes. Here's what we're doing. That's not an option. We're moving forward. No anger, no apology, just direction. Direction without identity does not feel oppressive. It feels clear, and clarity reduces chaos. There is also something important about listening in this conversation. Speaking with force requires listening without defensiveness. If you are constantly preparing your response, you are not listening. If you are searching for weakness in the other person's words, you are not listening. Listening with stability sharpens your force. Because your response becomes precise. You are not reacting to imagined threats. You are responding to actual content. That precision increases impact. Sometimes the most forceful thing you can say is very simple. I'm done. No, that's enough. We're not continuing this. Short, direct, final. No emotional storm required. Identity-driven speech tends to dramatize. Force-driven speech concludes. That difference saves enormous energy. There is a fear many people have. If I stop defending my identity in speech, won't I lose my edge? Look carefully. How much of your edge is actually tension? And how much of that tension is exhausting you? When you drop ego from your speech, you don't lose sharpness. You lose friction. And friction is not the same as strength. Friction burns energy. Force conserves it. Season 8 is about grounded power. Grounded power shows up in speech first. Because speech reveals stability. When you can speak clearly without bracing, when you can disagree without flaring, when you can set boundaries without shaking, you know ego is not running the moment. And when ego is not running the moment, energy remains available. Available for building. Available for solving. Available for moving forward. There is a quiet confidence that comes from this. You no longer dread difficult conversations. You no longer replay every sentence afterward. You no longer overcorrect tone endlessly. You speak. You adjust if necessary. You continue. That continuation is freedom. Because rumination drains energy. Clarity ends loops. You don't need to become louder. You don't need to become intimidating. You don't need to become hyper-assertive. You need to become aligned. When alignment is present, your words carry weight naturally. People sense when someone is speaking from identity. They also sense when someone is speaking from grounded force. One feels reactive, the other feels stable. Stability wins long-term. This is the invitation. Notice the next time you're about to speak. Are you defending something about yourself? Or are you simply responding to what is needed? Are you trying to preserve image? Or are you communicating clearly? That awareness alone shifts tone. And tone shapes outcomes. You are allowed to be direct. You are allowed to set limits. You are allowed to disagree. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to move conversations forward. Without aggression. Without apology. Without identity wrapped around it. Force without identity. That is powerful speech. If this episode shifted how you think about your voice, stay with the season. Season 8 is about power that doesn't require ego. If you want to go deeper, the full book series is linked below. And if you know someone who either explodes or shuts down in hard conversations, send this to them. Sometimes strength isn't louder. It's cleaner. We continue in episode 5.